Hello everyone. In this video, I have explained what does it mean by form validation. So when we talk about form validation, first thing that you must understand is what does it mean by form and how to create forms in HTML. Forms are generally the fundamental element that is used to collect data from the user. So something that would be of this kind of form. Okay, so here in what we do is we collect information from the user and we provide that information to the server. Okay, so that's how a form look like. Form is basically collecting information from the user. It's a tool to connect information from the user. Now, how do we make form? We use a container that is with a tag form. So for example, herein, I'm going to create an HTML page here. Okay, so if I want to create a form, what I would do is I'll use this container form. Okay, it has few attributes. The attributes of form are action, then you have method, okay, and then you have target. Okay, these are the most common attributes of the form. The action will specify the URL of the server-side script that will handle the form data. Okay, so wherever you want to submit the form, you're going to specify that URL over here. Method are generally of two types, get and post. By default is get. And you have, if you write it as post here, it will take a method as post. Now, the difference between get and post is when you submit a form, get will add the form data to the query that it submit to the server. Okay, the post hides that data. So if we talk about the security, post is more secure than the get. Okay, and the target specify where the form submission response will be displayed. Okay, so for example, I want to display the name. I want to retrieve the data of name and let's say address, city from the user, and I want to display it at a particular website. Okay, so that would be my target. So that's how the forms, the basic, very fundamental concept about the form. Okay, so let's create a form and let's check. Okay, so herein, I'm gonna create 3 divs, or let's say 5. Okay, so I created 3 div tags and I'm gonna say name, and herein I'm gonna say input type equals to text. Okay, so this will create an input tag. Okay, similarly, I'm gonna take this. So the way you have a text box, you have a password, you have a date. So for example, I'll write a date over here, and herein I'll write it as date. Okay, then similarly you have time. Okay, so herein what I would say is I'll just display the time, and herein I'll say time. Okay, then you can have something called as color to display the palette, that is the color palette. So I'm gonna say color, and herein I'm gonna say color. Okay, and you have password that will hide the details. So for example, herein I'll say password, and here in the input field, I'll say type equals to password. Okay, so whatever you type in here will be hidden. Okay, then again, let's say number. So if you want to get the number from the user, okay, I'll say input type equals to number. The number, you can also specify the range as minimum and maximum, etc. Okay, similarly, you can have type as URL, or you can have type as file. So for example, herein I'll ask the user to enter the URL, and I'll say input type equals to URL. Okay, and same way you can have it as email as well. Okay, so there are different types that are specified in form. One of them is submit as well, which act as a submit button. Okay, let's see. Let's run this and let's check. So here in C, the form data is being displayed over here. So name, then you have a date. If you click on here, you will be able to see the date or choose the date here, and the time is there. If you'll open here, this will be, you will have a color palette over here. Password, if you type something, it will be hidden. Numbers, so you can have minimum or maximum range as well in the number. And I'll just put this. And here in, if I put this, it will let me, if you try to submit this, it will tell you to enter an URL field. Okay, so that's how the forms are being created. Okay, if you want to let's say provide a styling over here, you can just style this form, apply margins so that it is being displayed properly. Okay, so now, the thing is, when let's say I have one more over here, and I'm gonna write it here, and I'm gonna say input type equals to submit. Okay, so what happens when you do this, and I'm gonna say value equals to, and I'm gonna display submit over here. Okay, when you submit this form, what happens is it will go to a website which you specify over here. So for example, here, and I'm gonna say, okay, um, okay, let's see first. Okay, and see, I have a field submit over here, right? And see, when I click on it, it goes to this website. Okay, so that's how the that's what is the role of the submit button. Okay, and if you do not want it, if you do not want the default behavior that when you click on submit it should go to some website, then you can also prevent that, okay, by saying prevent default. We're going to see it through an example. Okay, so this is how basically you create a form. Now what happened is, many times when you submit the data, for example, let's say you're submitting a data to the credit card company, okay, they want to check the format before submission, that the credit card number that you have entered is 16-digit long, or if I am writing the name of a state, uh, in the drop down menu, there cannot be more than 50 states that is entered there, right? So data integrity is essential to most applications, and many web forms require specific format for user to enter data. So this data integrity or this data validation is checking input for correctness. Okay, so we check input for correctness, and that is what is called as form validation. Okay, let's understand it through an example. Okay, wherein I'm going to ask the user to input some data, and I'm going to check whether the values in that field are valid or not. Okay, so let's see this. Okay, so let's see how to do that. Okay, let's understand it through an example, form validation or checking the form for correctness. So herein, I am going to create a form using a form tag again. And I'm gonna say again, the action equals to and HTTPS. Okay, method equals to, let's say, get, and I'm gonna provide an ID equals to, let's say, form. Okay, it could be any ID. And I'm gonna just create two fields over here. The first one is the text field. So I'm gonna say input type equals to text and ID equals to sales price. To display an error, I'll just create a span tag, ID equals to, and I'm gonna say it as error message. Okay, close this. And a submit button. So here I'm gonna say input type equals to submit, ID equals to, let's say, submit button, and value that I'm going to display on it will be equals to submit. Okay, so I am done with creating my form, and let's see how does it look. So I'm going to say save, and let's run this. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Okay, now see, if I click on submit button, it takes me to Google. Okay, so this is the default behavior of it. Okay, now if I want to stop a default behavior, I'm going to show you how can we stop a default behavior. Now what is this asking? This is asking me to enter a let's say sales price. Okay, so let's see. So here in, just to show the user, I'm going to use a label. Is equals to, and I'm going to provide a name here that is text. Okay, or let's sales. And I'm going to say enter sales price. Okay, let's see. Okay, so it is showing it like this. Okay, well, you can change all these values to CSS. Okay, we are going to focus on the functionality here. So now my basic form is ready, right? And let me just format it. Okay, now I want to add an event listener to the form. Okay, so the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to say form dot add event listener. Okay, and okay, first of all, we have to put it in the script. So I'm going to add it into a script. This I'll just, okay. So we're going to add it in the script. First, let's select all these values of input and the submit button, right? So I'm going to create one variable to get that. So I'm going to say let form equals to and document dot get element by ID, and my ID is form's ID is form. Right, so form dot get element by ID. Then I'm going to create one more variable to get the value in the text field. So I'm going to say let's sales price equals to, again, document dot get element by ID, and my sales price is this one, right? Okay. ID is sales price. So get element by ID sales price and get element by ID form, right? And I'm going to create one more to get the value in the span tag. So I'm going to say error message equals to document dot get element by ID, and here on I'm gonna ID, my ID is error message. Okay, let's change this one to just to avoid any confusion. Okay, so error message is equals to get element by ID error message. Okay, now let's add a event listener. So I'm gonna say form dot add event listener, And I want to add submit, like when you submit it, something should happen, right? It should check. So function E, okay, just to stop the default behavior, I have provided an argument inside the function. So when you submit it, I want it to first check everything and then submit it, okay? So you can just return some value from the form, or the easy way is to prevent the default behavior of the form so that when you click on the submit button, it does not submit, okay? And this, whatever is that error message, I'm gonna say error message dot inner HTML equals to blank. Okay, so whenever an error occurs, instead of blank, I'm gonna put some value over there. Okay, so herein I'm gonna say let input text. So first of all, what you have to do is you have to get the value that the user has typed into the text field, okay? And then have to check if that value is blank, or if the value falls under a particular range or not, or is it a number or not, okay? So first of all, you have to retrieve that value. So the way you're going to retrieve that value is you're going to say input text that sales, this one, sales price dot value, right? So I'm just gonna say input text equals to sales price dot value, okay? And then I'm gonna check here. So if this input text equals or input text dot length, so I'm gonna say input text dot length equals 0, okay? That means if there is nothing inside the text box, if it is blank, I am going to say this one wherein I have put the empty string. I'm gonna say populate that with, I'm gonna say sales price is missing. Okay, if this happens. Otherwise, if it is not a number, okay, so I'm gonna say else if this input text, so you're gonna say is n, yep, is nan input text. Okay, so if it is not a number, then you're gonna say please enter a number. So I'm gonna say error message dot inner HTML is please enter a number. Okay, similarly else if the ranges are different, okay, so I'm gonna say let sale price equals to, and whatever is the value, I'm gonna convert it into a float value, and I'm gonna say this, whatever the user has entered. Okay, and I'm gonna say if this price, sales price, is less than 10 or sales price is greater than 1000, okay, then you're gonna say that must be between $10. So I'm gonna say must be between $10 and 10, maybe let's say $1000. Okay. Else, if the program does not go to any of this if state, then you're gonna submit the form. So I'm gonna say form dot submit. Okay. So if you'll notice herein, I have prevented the default behavior. That means when you submit it, it will go to Google. But to prevent that, I said this one, and if only after checking all these, if it doesn't go to all these if statement, then submit the form. Okay, let's check if that works or not. So I'm gonna run this. Okay, and it did not run. So again, run it, submit it, and there is something wrong. Okay, and let's see what is wrong. Cannot set properties of null setting inner HTML form element anonymous. Okay, add line number 32. So at line number 32, it is saying something over here, error message dot inner HTML equals to this. And okay, so here run instead of this, ID is equals to error message, right? Okay, let me check. See, I think the spelling is wrong. So I'm gonna, because I missed this R from error message. Okay, let's see. So I'm gonna save it and let's run this again. And now I have this. So I'll just not put anything inside the text field and I'll say submit. And it is still showing me error. And let me check again. Okay, error message is not defined. Okay, I saved it, but looks like it has not. Okay, line number 32 again. Oh yeah, here. Okay, save it again. Let's see. Okay, submit. Still showing the same thing. Now, uncaught cannot set properties of null at HTML element 32. So here, error. Okay, let me see. So error message is equals to document.id error message is equals to blank. And error message sales is this. Please enter a number. Okay, the spellings are all right. Okay, it's the same thing. So let me check what's wrong. Okay, so if you'll see here in this error message, it was not inside the double quotes. Okay, so that is why it was giving me an error. So again, I created a form, I created the variables, I created these variables to get the values from the form. And let's see, open with the live server, and here, and if I'll just say submit, it is saying sales price is missing, right? Second, if I want to check whether it is between 10 and 1000, I'll just put a value 2 and let's say submit, and now it is saying must be between 10 and 1000, right? And let's say if I'll just put alphabet, okay, and I'll say submit, it is saying please enter a number. Okay, now I'll put a valid number. So let's say I'll put a value between 10 and 1000. I'll say 200 and I'll say submit, and now it is submitting the form. Okay, so that's how it works, and that's how we have prevented the default behavior as well. So in this video, we have seen how to prevent a default behavior using e.prevent a default, and we have seen how to validate a form. So herein, I just used two fields, that is a text field and a submit button. Now again, this is going to check whether the sales price entered by the user is in the required format or not. First of all, it should not be blank. It should be in the range of 10 to $1,000, and it should be a number, right? And that's how the form validation works. Form validation is very common in web designing and web programming. So make sure that you understand this, and feel free to ask question if you have any. Thank you and happy coding.